Shepard.
We'll have to wait and see officially what happens after that. Hopefully one more nice day tomorrow with a high 56 before the rain back Thursday.
I don't see Commissioner Briscoe yet. Let's give him a couple minutes here. He was pulling into harbor as we got off the phone earlier, so he may be trying to get his boat tied up.
So what is it
We're muted
that you
again.
want? Give me a call with your request at 360-676-5233.
I'm getting some background noise of somebody with their radio station on. If you want to mute yourself if you're not speaking, that would be great. Thank you. All right, and we'll get started momentarily. Thank you all for being here.
Your microphone is controlled by, yeah.
Commissioner, you?
Oh, now we recognize him.
Now we know who's online.
Yeah, well, I'm a little scruffy. I was up at 2:30 this morning. I haven't shaved for a couple of days, and I'm not the picture of beauty. So there you go.
How is
I
that
look
different
like an
from
old fish.
how is that different from normal?
Oh, you're skating on thin ice, buddy.
So, commissioners, I just want to let you know, since two of you aren't here, we do have our first guest since last March. So we have a gentleman who's joined us, but he said he did not necessarily want to comment, but I thought I'd let you know we do have someone in the audience here.
And I'm going to open the meeting. I'm first going to start by closing the executive session and opening the public meeting, and do a roll call. Commissioner Shepard,
Here.
Commissioner Briscoe,
Here.
Commissioner Bell is here, and we will begin by asking if anyone has a comment they would like to make at the beginning of this meeting. Is there any public comment? Just raise your hand or make yourself known. I see Chip. Shall we start with Chip?
Hey, thank you very much, Board Commissioners. We appreciate your time this last meeting, bringing up and chatting about apprenticeship utilization language for future port projects. And we just wanted to reiterate, we're here to help, here to answer whatever questions you may have. And we look forward to chatting with you in the future and helping in any way possible.
Chip, thank you, but I got to get my Dodge in here. You got a Scuttle Brewing shirt on. That's at the Port of Everett. You're at the Port of Bellingham right now, buddy. We require Coulson, Aslan.
Well, maybe here in the future, I could try one or two of those local breweries up there, and we all could break bread together.
So the next time you're before the Port of Everett, would you have a Boundary Bay Brewery or a Coulson Brewery shirt on?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I could make that happen. Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chip.
Yeah, thanks a lot,
Thanks,
guys.
Chip. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Heather?
Hi, this is Heather Katahdin. I'm calling to request a low barrier village and camp to be created with any local nonprofits who are willing to take this task on. And I'm aware we have unsheltered neighbors living on port land and that they will need facilities such as public porta pots. I'm also aware that there's a portion of our railroad tracks that appear exposed to the skateboarders and the public who walk by. And that's the portion off of West Laurel Road. And I would like to see fencing or something secure put up along there. I appreciate your work. I hope you'll continue communications with Bellingham City and with any nonprofit individuals that are willing to work to include our whole community to have a safe place to rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Is anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, we'll go on with the regular meeting then. We will start with the consent agenda. So I will start before we go to the consent agenda with reading the committee schedules because the boss told me to. The BIAC, the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, will meet April 8th at 4 p.m. and that will be a Zoom meeting. And the Marina Advisory Committee will meet April 13th and that will also be a Zoom meeting. You can go to our webpage to get the link for the Zoom. But again, the BIAC is on April 8th. And the MAC is on April 13th. Now we will go to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through G.
Mr. Shepherd, do you have anything?
I do not. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I do not.
So if it would please you two, I'm actually going to pull item G from the consent for a little bit of a discussion, if you don't mind, and that's the renewal of the security contract.
I'm good with that.
Okay. So what I'd like to do, if we don't, let's go through and approve the consent agendas, and then I'd like to discuss G separately.
So the motion should be through items A through F.
So the consent agenda items A through F for approval. Carrie?
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through F.
Commissioner Shepherd?
I'm a yes.
Mr. Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is also a yes. So the reason I wanted to pull this one, we're in the process of redoing the security agreement, and we've also got some unusual security issues that we've been having to deal with. So rather than try to deal with those on an ad hoc basis, I'd like to at least make sure that we've got enough money and have the discussion with the executive director over what security we're going to need given the current environment. We've had to use a little bit more of our security money to handle issues down at the waterfront. And I know that we've got some issues at Squalachum that have had us increase. So I just want to make sure that if we're going to renew this security contract for a year, that it's adequately funded and that we've covered the issues we're going to need through, May of next year with this, with the appropriate funds. And I don't think this has it. I think this was put together and established before we saw some of the issues that we've been dealing with. Mr.
Well,
Fix.
thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that awareness. Just a couple things on that. One, the contract that we have here is an ordinary course of business contract, and we always anticipate that there will be abnormalities or other things that require extra security. And this year was a great example as we put a lot of extra security into Squalachum Harbor during a period of time where we had a lot of theft down there. But that's accounted for in the budget. So we do budget over and above what we have in this contract to cover situations like that. The concern I have right now with this contract, and the contract as presented to you is fine, but if we were to increase the scope of it, the concern I would have is that their ability to meet it. I'd want to have that conversation with Pacific Security because, as you know, we called for some extra security as early as Sunday and had a hard time getting them down there. It was a staffing concern. So if we're going to increase the scope of this contract, I think we need to sit down with the owners of the company and make sure that they're able to do that or figure out another method to meet our needs.
Well, I don't see this going away in the next year. I think we're going to have increased security on the waterfront. I think the summer's going to bring increased activity down there on the waterfront, especially if we put some containers down there and we have commerce. So I would like to see us have that discussion.
Sure, I agree. As we start to open up business on the waterfront, it'll require extra security, and we just ask that we amend this contract after we do the research as to what we need down there and have those discussions with the commissioners, of course.
So we'll basically approve this today with an amendment to come later?
Correct.
Are you two okay with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm seeing last year we did a 15% increase. This year we're doing a 33% increase. And I think it's reasonable that we have security, but we're also building out the waterfront district is part of the city of Bellingham and part of the area that Bellingham Police Department patrols and can patrol in addition if we need their support. So I don't think it's on us to account for all security needs in city properties. We already have a force that does that, and I'd like to make sure that our security team stays focused on the places that we really need them, and we don't have the same level of coverage from Bellingham PD. So those are just some questions that I'll have going into the future as we look at this more, but I appreciate you bringing this up to our attention.
Is the extra staffing that you require, is that at a higher cost, or is that?
Well, it depends on when you demand it. Yeah, a lot of times it's going to be at time and a half because you're getting into overtime for individuals, or you're getting into evenings or days. But just to address something Commissioner Shepard brought back up here, because it was a 30-some% increase this year, and we did have based that somewhat on Squalachum. That money will be freed up as far as time goes in this contract once we install the gates that we plan on installing in Squalachum Harbor. We'll quit having. We'll still have security patrols in Squalachum Harbor, but we won't have the extra patrols that we're putting on now. And then that'll free up hours that we can put elsewhere. So that's why I'm comfortable with this contract as it's written. I think we've got some wiggle room in here, but I do recognize that this is an ongoing issue, ongoing concern. Scott is our security officer. He's well aware of it, and we're going to have some conversations about where we deploy forces.
Yeah, if nothing else, if we can resolve the issue of the lack of staffing, that's a concern.
Agree.
Commissioner Briscoe, do you have anything more?
Well, with increased activity that we've seen here just in the last few days, and you can probably see more of it around the city. The police force is probably going to get stretched in as well. I like that the Bellingham Police Department comes and assists us, but I don't think that we necessarily want to put all our eggs in that basket. I think that maybe we need to put X amount of dollars aside that we can dip into if we need to. I see more problems coming as the weather gets better. Things are probably going to get, when the weather does get better, it's probably going to get real messy. Cold weather tends to hamper some of the emotions and things that go on. So I definitely think we're going to see a need for increased security on our part. And I don't think we can pretend to pass it all off the increase to the Bellingham Police Department, because I think most likely everybody's going to have their hands full here. So I'd like to see us do something.
I will also add that the more these encampments get moved, the more likely we are to see people looking for just any place to go. So we probably have a very short-term issue for our port property, maybe not a long-term one, but I'm just concerned that we have enough resources to make sure that we protect the port property.
So commissioners, the port staff will work on something. Is there one of you would like to be the lead on this and work with the staff? Would you rather the staff come back to all three of you? How would you like to do that?
I don't believe we should leave it in one person's hands. I think that maybe we can have one person as a point lead person, but I think that this always needs to be discussed between all three commissioners. I don't think we want to let it rest on any one person's shoulders here.
I agree with that, and
that's where I stand on it.
I agree with that, Commissioner Briscoe, and I just also want to say, even though the Cornwall Street area is not port property, there is an impact to port properties from all of the activity that's going on a port. So there will be a tendency to move in that direction, and I just think having extra security along those port buildings is going to be key. We know, we've seen the human feces on the doorstep, right? So I don't want to undercut this at this juncture. So that's my only concern. And I would like to have it all come back to the full commission. But I will be more than happy to do whatever you need me to do. If you're looking for a volunteer.
No, if we're going to put this on a future commission agenda, and it sounds like that's what we want to do, then I think the best course is to have staff do their best staff work and bring it back to you.
Okay.
As always with the commission, I think that Mr. President should be the lead person on this. He is the president. So I think we can have our special meetings if need be to discuss this amongst the three of us if there's something that comes up that needs that much discussion. But I would say our president would be the focal point.
Okay, so we're going to approve, as it stands now, we're going to go back and approve item G with the understanding that this will come back to us at a later date with some revisions. I don't know if we have to, do we have to revise this agreement in order to come back with a revision?
No, you would do that revision when we bring it back to you.
Okay.
So motion to approve consent agenda item G with room for future adjustment.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bell is a yes as well. Thank you for indulging me with that. And now we'll move on to action items.
Okay, motion to approve a 3% increase in recreational moorage rates at Squalachum Harbor effective April 1st, 2021.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Tiffany DeSimone, Manager of Marinas Now and Community Outreach. As you can imagine, my excitement and anticipation to discuss this often passionately debated topic in my new role. So I will ask for a little bit of grace, and I certainly have my team, Pam Taft and Kyle Randolph, on the line here for more in-depth questions that I may not be yet prepared to answer.
Is that a bulletproof vest?
I'm at the airport because I'm picking up a friend at the airport.
No,
so
I'm just asking if it's bulletproof because you're going to need one.
Well, so in my research, as I began to prepare for this, I thought, well, let me just go back and see what happened last year. And Commissioner Bell opens up the discussion with, I'm having an anaphylactic response to this debate. And I thought, oh no, I'm in trouble. So anyway, what you have in front of you is an action item for a recommendation for a 3% increase for recreation moorage rate at Squalachum Harbor. And I will give you the brief background, which is for those that don't have the action memo in front of them, which is that there was a resolution adopted in 2014 for a moorage model that increased rates annually by 4% for recreation, 2% for active commercial fishermen, and then that sort of tapered off. And so that's what we've been doing annually. We've made that recommendation annually. To the best of my understanding, we did a conditions assessment that was to be reviewed. That moorage model was to be reviewed in 2018. We waited on a conditions assessment that happened in 2019. That assessment came back a little higher than we had anticipated when you included project costs and dredging. And so last year, 2019, the commission approved a 4% increase to recreational moorage for both harbors and no increase to active commercial fishermen. We'll fast forward to 2020, where we requested a 4% increase to Squalachum recreation moorage rates, nothing to Blaine and nothing to active commercial fishermen. It's my understanding that as we're compiling information, that conditions assessment report, the moorage model rate recommendations from the MAC, who spent time and energy and a lot of thought behind that. And now we're getting down to the actual project process, the equipment cost, the labor cost, and all of that. And so now I am taking some time to meet with internally with our project engineers and our maintenance staff to really drill down on those costs. All of that being said, the recommendation for the 3% recreational mortgage rate increase at Squalachum comes for a couple of reasons. One, I believe it's a moderate request as we come out of a pandemic. We understand, a little anecdote, I sat in with the Pacific Coast Congress of Harbor Masters and Marina Managers this last week. And so that was people in this line of business, experts in this line of business from Alaska to California. And not a single one of them said that their recreational boating suffered during the pandemic. And so I think that this was a fairly conservative rate increase. We're not going to touch active commercial fisher rates, and we're not going to touch the Blaine mortgage rates, with the intent on some things I've heard the commission talk about over the past few months, which is increasing that differential between Squalachum and Blaine, which gets us to that incentivizing our customers to move to Blaine and hopefully move along that very long wait list at Squalachum Harbor. And so my recommendation is sort of based on all of those things, and as I get up to speed on all things marina. So I believe that this is consistent with Port goals of being responsive to changing market conditions and to being responsible with our public assets. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not going to go line by line through that blue line mortgage model Excel spreadsheet that I know has been covered in previous meetings. But if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioner Shepard.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany, and congratulations on your new role. We're excited to have you, and I'm sure you'll do great. My thoughts are, one, I recognize the need for us to invest and bank money for the future costs that we have in our inner harbor. They're substantial. We know we're doing everything we can to get as much life out of those facilities as possible, so that we're spending our money wisely and reusing what we already have to the full extent of its life. And I think we're really working some miracles here too, and keeping some things on going well past some of the expected lifespan that they were able to attain. So I think we're doing a great job there. And it's really important that we're able to bank up some of these reserves to cover those future costs. I also support our pathway towards creating a differential in prices to make Blaine increasingly attractive for our recreational and commercial fleet. Blaine's got a lot of great things going on, and it's going to be attractive for a lot of reasons, and one of them is that price differential. The challenge I'm having is where I feel like we left this last year was we were waiting on an update on our mortgage model. We had meetings with MAC, we had talked about it with staff, and we were, and quite frankly, I've just been waiting for this update that I felt like was coming, and unless I'm incorrect, it hasn't arrived with a updated approach and refresh of our mortgage model. And so I was really expecting that to come before we were asked to provide any additional rate increases. And at present, that's my it's my request that we wait until we have that updated process and we're able to understand some of those numbers better and reflect on that with our various task force before we're asked to do another rate increase.
Commissioner Briscoe.
Well, as everyone knows, as knowledge, I don't like to raise rates if we don't have to. I think things need to be dug in a little more deeply, as Commissioner Shepard spoke to. If my memory serves me correct, we have a span of $60 million to $180 million for this project. That's $120 million discrepancy in between there. I'm a little unsure that this is the time to take action with anything until we know what we're actually dealing with. I realize cost increases, so on and so forth. I would speak to the recreational boaters being busier than ever. Well, that's pretty much a given. When you're locked down at home, you go to your boat, get on your boat, you go out where there's no people. You're social distancing, basically. So all the experts can say that, you know, boating was great through the pandemic. I would have expected nothing less. I couldn't wait to get mine in the water so I could get away from the beach. So that's just a simple human process that took place when you didn't have anything else to do. So I think the true picture of the pandemic is there's a lot of people who are suffering, whether they have boats or not, as far as monetarily. So I believe in my mind that this would put a hardship on some of the people at this point in time. I would like to have the information, as Commissioner Shepherd said, so that we have all the correct things in hand as a commission to make a informative decision on the public's property. And that's where I'm at with it. I would like to see this set aside until we have all the correct information from staff and whether outside entities need to be involved. That's all I have, Mr. President.
My name is Ken. Commissioner Briscoe. Thank you, Bill. I tend to agree. I think, first of all, Tiffany, the hardest thing you could possibly take on at this juncture is this, right? And it's your first thing out of the box. So there's a part of me that wants you to look at this from your angle. I think we're bringing forward a rate model that you didn't have your fingers on. I would love to see what your take is on this when you get some time to massage it. So part of me says, I think the mortgage model needs some work. I think you've kind of heard that from all of us. I also think the pandemic needs to settle down a bit. And we need to figure out what the real implication of the commercial and pleasure boating community is going to do when the pandemic ceases. So I think I'd love to see this come back without an action today until we get a chance to do some more work on that model, until we see how the pandemic settles down. And I think the financials need to be better understood. I would love to see us do a full financial breakdown of what this looks like. I've always had a desire to index rates with inflation. To me, coming before the commission makes it political, and I can't think anybody would argue against some kind of inflationary rate adjustment, but that's never been incorporated into the model. So I have a big desire to see us, depoliticize this a little bit and tie the rates a little bit to inflation, so it's not an every year, are you going to raise them, or are you not going to raise them? I think there is some formula we can develop for that. And again, quite frankly, I don't think the disparity between Squalachum and Blaine is significant enough to drive traffic. I think it's going to take a greater delta on those financials to drive traffic into Blaine and free up some of the slips that we have in the Squalachum Harbor. So for those reasons, I'd like to see this come back. Tiffany, I'd love to see how you can massage that and make it work. I think you've heard from all three of us that we think the model needs some tweaking. But my desire is to see a greater delta, some tie to inflation. And I think we need to see how the pandemic settles down. So I would like to table this until we can get some of those answers. Was that work for the other two of you? I said three of you, thinking Tiffany was.
Commissioner Bell, I would request we take a vote on this.
I think that's right. I think it's simplest if you vote this down and we come back to you with something completely new. Otherwise, we're kind of strung on trying to justify this or bring this forward and change it. So I think it's best to vote it down.
That's fair. Okay, so we'll take a vote.
Plus, we want Tiffany's first action as marina manager to go down in 03.
Well, the good news is I can only go up from here.
Well, this is not a failure.
I really appreciate all
Tiffany,
that input.
welcome aboard.
And this is not a failure. This is
Aboard
just
as
a
the director
recognition
of
that you
marinas.
need to put your fingerprints on it, I think.
Thanks. I appreciate the input, and we'll certainly take a look at that mortgage model in closer detail. Thanks.
Thank you. Carrie, would you?
Yes. Motion to approve a 3% increase in recreational mortgage rates at Squalachum Harbor effective April 1st, 2021.
Commissioner Briscoe,
No.
Commissioner Shepard,
I'm a no.
and Commissioner Bell is a no. Action item number 2.
Okay. Motion by the Port Commission to approve a new commercial lease between the Port of Bellingham and Pacific Cruises Northwest, Inc., DBA Port Fairhaven, to operate a fish and chip restaurant in Bellingham Cruise Terminal.
Hi, Commissioners. So for the record, Shirley McFerrin, Real Estate Director. And I want to welcome to our meeting one of our shining star tenants, Drew Schmidt. I think he's here. Drew, are you here? Can you wave your flag?
I'm here, Shirley.
Hey, nice to see you. So Drew operates San Juan Cruises at the Bellingham Cruise Terminal. He's been a port tenant since the fall of 1991, 30 years. I feel like I've grown up with him. In July 2020, he opened the Salish Trading Post gift shop at the terminal. And with your approval today, he will take over the small restaurant space to operate a fish and chip restaurant, likely to open in June at the cruise terminal. So I was telling him when we talked about this that why don't we just lease the whole building to you, Drew, and call it good.
And beyond that, my name's Bob. I'm always happy. Well, we've got a bit of it now.
Anyway, so we're super excited to have this in front of you, and staff recommends approval. And Drew, if you have any comments, we would love to hear from you.
Don't worry. I don't know that I have many comments. We're looking forward to seeing some activity down here, and appreciate the port staff helping put it all together, gathering up outside tables so people can have some fish and chips and a cold beer out on the end of the pier on a nice summer evening. And I guess everybody should open a restaurant during a global pandemic. So what the heck?
Hey, Drew, can you share with us how many meals you serve through San Juan Cruises? Because being a restaurant is not a new endeavor for you.
It's not a new endeavor. We serve, actually, I said to you the other day, 30,000 a year. We figured out we've done 30,000 crab dinners down here, and we serve probably about 15,000 meals a year on all of our different boats.
Mm-hmm. The Port of Bellingham has a large lot that's
Quite a bit. Thank you.
I think you charge $6 a day to park there, but it's pretty secure parking.
Mr. Shepard, would you like to speak?
I think it's an exciting sign that we're positioning ourselves for recovery. It's been a hard year and not an easy year for anyone. And these signs like this provide some of that light at the end of the tunnel that things are getting better, things are getting normal, and we'll return to some normalcy. We'll have increased traffic and people will be coming in on boats and trains and buses, and that mix will be happening again to utilize that shipping term or the cruise terminal, and for us to benefit from some increased food options. So thanks for the idea, and I look forward to this. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe, anything?
Yeah, are we gonna have clam chowder too?
Absolutely.
Attaboy. Well done.
And corkscrew calamari.
All right. Congrats and good luck on this venture. I'm glad you're doing this. Very, very well appreciated. Will be appreciated by our community, especially the Fairhaven.
Thanks.
Obviously not a low carb venue, is it, Drew?
Not a bit.
Yeah. So my comment, Drew, is I just want to say thank you for believing in the future of the port. And at this time, it's a very difficult time to invest in anything, especially a restaurant, but you have stepped up and you have shown confidence in us. And I just want to say thank you for giving us a shot in the arm. Just to have somebody believe in the future of that area and the future of what the port can bring to you is a big deal. So I just wanted to say thanks for that.
Well, you guys do a great job, and I appreciate getting to be a part of it.
Yeah, right back at you. So, Commissioner Briscoe, would you like to vote? Oh, we should
need
probably
to read it again, or
Yeah.
Motion by the Port Commission to approve a new commercial lease between the Port of Bellingham and Pacific Cruises Northwest, DBA, Port Fairhaven, to operate a fish and chip restaurant in the Bellingham Cruise Terminal.
Now, Mr. Briscoe,
Aye.
Commissioner Shepard,
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Bell is also a yes. Welcome aboard. Again.
Excellent. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're at the end of our agenda. We will move on to other business. I will start with Commissioner Briscoe.
Is Don Goldberg on? I haven't looked. Don, are you there?
Yes, I am, Commissioner.
Say, Don, I saw the email. Maybe we'd like to take a moment to express our sympathy for the Chandler family.
Yeah, Jeff.
Maybe you could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Jeff Callender, who was a member of the Business and Commerce Committee. He was a longtime employee of Phillips 66 and on the board of Bellingham Tech. Has been ill for quite some time. I spoke to him about 6 weeks ago. He seemed to be doing better. And his wife called me yesterday morning to let me know that Jeff passed away on Friday. Loss to the community. I know he suffered for quite some time. And I'm not quite sure when the service is going to be. I did post to all the Business and Commerce Committee Jeff's family address.
Thank you, Don, and my condolences to the family.
Why don't we take 30 minutes of silence for Jeff? Jeff was a good friend of the port.
Okay, thank you for that. Yes, he will be missed.
Other than that, Commissioner Bell, I have nothing at this time. I'm sure something will pop into my head
I'm
for
sure.
the discussions, but nothing at this time.
Yeah, give me a minute. I'll pry something loose. Commissioner Shepard?
I wanted to follow up on two of the pieces of public comment. One about the fencing. Rob, did you understand where that fencing was, and is that something we need to look into?
So yeah, we're going to fence off our area. The former Lignan property does border the railroad there and is not fenced off from it. So we're going to fence that off. There'll still be access to that railroad from Laurel Street because that's a crossing. So you can access the train tracks from any crossing, but at least you won't be able to wander there from the Lignan parcel.
Okay.
And Dave Warder's on here. Dave, correct me if I'm incorrect on that, but I believe the fencing work we're going to do is going to include that.
Yeah, we will, again, sorry, this is Dave Warder, Marine Terminals Manager and Emergency Services Manager. Yes, Rob, we'll be looking at the fencing issue with our maintenance team tomorrow to kind of encapsulate that entire former Lignan site and as it needs to be around the train track side underneath the overpass.
Okay, great. I wanted to just briefly address the other issue. We have since Sunday been notified that we have individuals experiencing homelessness utilizing port property. And I just want to give a little bit of context about what my conversations with county and city individuals today. Starting last week, people who have been at the encampment at Jerry Field have been notified by city, county, and other support agencies that did direct outreach to those individuals. They were informed that they needed to use available shelter services that already exist in the community. and we're given options to store possessions and connect with service providers. I've been serving on the county council appointed homeless strategies work group for just about 3 years. And when I started that, our biggest task was to find a 200-bed shelter. And that seemed like a monumental task that was very challenging and had posed a lot of challenge for the city to cite for many years. But in 2020, that was accomplished, and Base Camp was brought online. It has showers, it has services, it has storage, it has hot meals, and people who can help individuals experiencing homelessness. And I think that has been a major accomplishment. During that time, the city has worked with the county and other partners to also bring into the mix tiny homes, both in Fairhaven, at Jerry Field, and soon to be at the old Clean Green site with a new partnership that's been announced to start in May. During this time, we've also seen encampments and protests at City Hall and individuals choosing not to utilize some of those existing support services. And the availability at the mission has been fairly steady for several weeks and months, with up to 30% capacity available at that location. When there is also additional opportunity for use of the drop-in center if the base camp itself fills up. So I think it's clear we need to continue to address capacity issues around housing in a spectrum of that housing. But I do really want to encourage those individuals and those advocates who are working with those individuals to utilize the available services that we have in our community, we've worked hard for, we've invested in, and really fill a important need. The use of occupation of public property, which is owned by the citizens of this county, is not the right option here. And we're really trying to balance our ability for government to provide services, work with partners to provide services for individuals who are currently occupying spaces, while we're also trying to, at the same time, look to those groups that aren't quite as loud and vocal, don't typically camp out in tents in front of public buildings and demand services, like the 90 families with children who are currently experiencing homelessness in our community and are being put up in motels and hotels. It's no place for children to be. It's in a pandemic or not. And what's really saddening to me is that when I started on the homeless outreach group, we had that number down to almost zero of those families with children experiencing homelessness in our community. Through economic crisis and a pandemic, that number has really jumped. And it's challenging for us to find the resources needed to support those individuals. And so we are trying to do a lot of things at the same time. And it's important for me that we're able to diversify our attention and our budgets on the variety of needs that we have. So when we have available services, I really do encourage individuals to utilize them. That's a lot of me being on my soapbox, but those were my thoughts on that topic. Thanks.
And is that all the other business you have as well, Commissioner Shepherd?
I have one other piece. If anybody has any discussion on this before I move on, I'm open to that.
I did, Michael. There was one thing that hasn't been touched on. You had very good points there. What you said made a lot of sense, and it's heartfelt. But the thing I have a real problem with is the homeless people are being used by certain entities outside of this county. They're being used to create a lot of the problems we have here. And shame on those people. Shame on those people using people that are down and out and are struggling. Shame on them. They need to grow up. That's all I have.
Okay,
Commissioner Bell, did you have any follow-up comments on this topic?
Yeah, I'm of the same mindset that I think it's just a shame. It's hard enough to be homeless and to have the political environment create a situation that's worse for you than it was before is something I don't agree with as well.
Yeah.
Let's go on to number 2.
My second was to get an update on development at the waterfront. I know we have a deadline that is approaching. I don't actually have that off the top of my head for when Harcourt's next development deadline is for the waterfront condos. It's my understanding that they have their permits in hand, and it's been really exciting to see that hole dug and to prep. And it seems like we've stalled out a little bit on progress down there. And it's part of our responsibility to manage those deadlines as part of our contract. So I'm wanting to make sure that I've got that number in my head and see when we're going to be getting another update.
Commission, I had penciled this in for the 20th. Obviously, the agenda is subject to the commission president's approval, but I think April 20th is when we're planning on giving you a Harcourt update.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, so I've got 2. Let me start with the one that I think is probably we can actually maybe do something about. And that is, I would like to address the public comment period. I think throughout the year we've watched as the meeting hasn't gone until 5:30 when we have promoted public comment period. I would like to just amend our policy on that and say that we will do one at the beginning and at the end of our meeting instead of having the times. I'm going to do a little bit of soapbox here too in honor of Commissioner Shepard. If we have something really controversial, we're going to be here till 5:30 anyway. And if we have something that we think is going to be it's going to be necessary to extend it, we can always do that. But for the most part, public comment hasn't come in at the end of our meetings, and we've spent a great deal of time waiting for somebody to come on just so that we can take a 45-minute break and come back and restart the meeting. So if you two would at least consider, let's do our public comment at the beginning and at the end of our meetings. And if we feel the need to extend it beyond that, we can always do that. But I just think from a prudence standpoint and just to get the meetings done when they're done, I haven't seen the need to go to 5:30. Anytime we've taken a break and come back at 5:30, there has been no comment. But I do think that at the end of the meeting, we can probably entertain that if you guys would at least consider that. Commissioner Shepard?
I think that sounds practical. I mean, we typically get our comment in the beginning. And if we've got a packed agenda or if we've got really sensitive topics, people are going to probably show up for that first one, and we're probably going to go long, and we will have a past 5:30 plus timeline. I think we are more accessible than ever, and people utilize a variety of different ways to contact us, and we just have lots of email and phone conversations with individuals as well. And I really like that people feel comfortable and make time to be part of this political process and show up and provide their opinions to us and give us ideas to work on. But I'm seeing most of that happen at the beginning, and to make effective use of staff time and everyone else's time, I see having the second meeting or second public comment at the end of the meeting as being sufficient.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, I can attest to the fact that we have that because when I became a commissioner, we had a lot of controversial things on the commission's plate. And our meetings were running into, and Director Fix can correct me if I'm wrong, but we had meetings running into 7:30, quarter to 8. We put that in because a lot of the folks that wanted to give testimony worked from 8 to 5, and it did not give them time to get from their workplace to the meeting to give their testimony. So we had put that in place to solve that problem, and we had some pretty big crowds at times. As of late, you're correct. We, whether it is we don't have so many controversial things going on, although I don't know that that's true, but we don't seem to have as much animosity from the public, I guess I could say, as we did back when the Harcourt thing was all twisted up. We had a lot of stuff going on. So I think that the people understand that if there's a need for us to change back to that 5:30 solid testimony, that we can do that. We're willing to do that as a commission. But I think your idea of taking the public comment, as we've seen in the last 6 to 8 months, or maybe more, we've had very few people that I can recall at the 5:30 testimony, and I'm sure, public comment period rather, and I'm sure if they knew that the public comment was taken before the meeting or whatever time after, that we could accommodate them. So I'm in favor of the change as you see it, Commissioner Bell. It's fine with me, just as long as we know that if there's need to move back to accommodate people, we will.
So I should probably put that in a motion and say that I move that we move our public comment period beginning with the next meeting, so that it's properly announced, to the beginning of our Port Commission meeting and at the end of our Port Commission meeting. And it can be extended if necessary. So moved.
I second the motion.
Commissioner Shepard?
That was a second from Commissioner Briscoe.
Yep.
Are we
Yeah,
voting
we're voting.
now?
Yeah.
I'm a yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
And Commissioner Bell is a yes. So a positive change. Okay, so the last thing I've got is an issue that concerns me greatly, and it again, Commissioner Shepard, I apologize for you hearing this again, but I have a big problem with some of the mandates being handed down from not only Olympia but also nationally without us addressing some of the permitting issues that we have in our area. I know, Commissioner Shepard, you gave some testimony on the House bill with on Representative Fitzgibbon's bill, and I would have liked to have had the opportunity to really hammer home the fact that they can put all those recommendations in, but if they don't ease the permitting requirements, we're not doing ourselves any favor. We've had 3 alternative energy projects here in the state, all on ports, Grace Harbor, Kalama, and ours, where we've lost jobs because the permitting process was extended. The SEPA process was unworkable. And they're all projects that would have given us a net increase in, or a net decrease in carbon footprint and a net increase in jobs. So I really do want to make a statement. I mean, as we got into this discussion with Mr. Representative Fitzgibbons, it got contentious. He was a little defensive about us losing our Phillips 66 alternative energy, or our alternative fuel project up here, and it didn't end well. If you want to go back and look at the tape, it was pretty ugly. It was a show. But he challenged me with something, and I'm going to come back to him with it, and that is I really want now, because he asked me what we would want to have done. In my mind, the state can do a lot of things with the environmental process, including reform of the SEPA process. including the number of appeals that can go through. And I've just seen 3 projects with major, with substantial investments. I mean, I look at the $400 million potash export facility. It took 5 years to put in, and it was a $4 million project, and it was completely scuttled due to permitting. The liquid bulk customer permit and build facility went to California because of the uncertainty of permitting in Washington State. And my biggest problem with Representative Fitzgibbon's bill is that he's imposing standards on us that we could have had a facility fulfill if we had allowed Phillips 66 to go through their permitting process. They stopped their permitting as soon as they were required to do a full environmental impact statement. That would have delayed that project another 10 years. The project penciled for them if they had a reasonable permitting process. So I'm becoming more and more disturbed, not only with the fact that permitting is a problem for our low-income housing, but I'm also disturbed that we keep losing jobs because we have to, a cumbersome, unpredictable environmental impact statement SEPA process with the state. And I believe that the state is going to go forward with that bill. They need to address permitting first. The thing that's the most ironic is that the facility that could actually provide the fuels that are being required under that just moved to Louisiana so that we could import those Phillips 66 jobs. Those jobs we just exported down to Louisiana can now ship fuel back to us so we can meet the requirements of the bill. And that to me is absolutely wrong. So I really want to put an effort on, and I'm going to ask the commissioners if you want to sign on to it when I'm done with it. But I was actually thrown down a challenge by Representative Fitzgibbons to tell him what we need to make those things possible. And if I can put that list together, including SEPA, including a pathway for a company that wants to come in here and do alternative fuels that would benefit all of us, I would like to see if I could pass that before you guys and get your support in order to move the permitting process in addition to or before we pass any mandates from the state level that we can't meet. With that, I'll kind of leave it to, you know, if I'm going to throw the grenade. So, Michael, I apologize for not throwing the grenade at you, but I want to see this thing blow up a little bit. Hey, Bobby, what's your comment?
Oh, yeah. Give me the shovel in the club. Okay, we'll get to it. Well, a couple of things. I feel that when a commissioner speaks in public about something, or you speak from a seat in a committee, that you need to make who you're speaking for very clear. And by that, I mean, if you're speaking for the commission, then you tell them you're speaking for the commission, but you better have spoken with your fellow commissioners about what it is you're speaking to. Otherwise, you should not speak as a commissioner. You should speak as an individual, because it tends to lead people to believe that the commission is on board with what you're agreeing to. Now, whether the commission would agree with what you're agreeing to or not agree with what you're agreeing to, that needs to be found out. The only place that can be discussed is right here under other business. So I was a little bit taken back, Commissioner Shepard, at your speaking in Olympia with Liz Lovelet moderating, that the implication was very clear there that you were speaking for the Port of Bellingham Commission, and you were not. I, as a person speaking under those circumstances, would have said, I, Bobby Briscoe, am speaking my own opinion. I'm not representing the Port of Bellingham or the commission. A single commissioner doesn't have the right to do that. None of us do. So in the future, I would ask that if you're speaking for the commission, and the commission has asked to be spoken for, that's represented that way. But if you're not speaking for the commission and haven't talked to your fellow commissioners about what it is you're speaking to, that you speak on a personal level. So that's out of the way for me. The other thing is as Commissioner Bell pointed out, everybody's running down this road, waving this great big flag to tax everybody with, I don't even know how they want to do it, really. That's a little unclear. But we've got a lot of issues that need to be resolved before we put this thing in place. It's just like everything else that's been coming out of Olympia lately. You know, we just ram it through and worry about the ramifications to the general people later. And that's not the way you're supposed to do business. That's not government. It just doesn't work. And that's why we have the mess we have in this country, is because everybody just keeps pushing through their special agendas because it's what they think they need to do. How about we work for the people? I think Commissioner Bell's idea of giving our ideas are put together. We need to speak about this. We need to come up with what we think are good ideas, how we can help create what needs to be done in a manner that it works for everybody and brings jobs to our county, doesn't take them away. I've been pretty upset about this, the Phillips 66 as well as BP projects kind of being scuttled because of permitting processes. So now we're shipping our fuel from Taiwan over on a tanker so we can use it here. Or, you know, I mean, it's just none of this is making any sense. And everybody's kind of got the cart before the horse here. And Olympia is the biggest one. They're driving things backwards. They need to turn around and look and see where they're going. Because in my opinion, as a commissioner and as a person living in Whatcom County, what they're doing sucks. A lot of it doesn't make any sense. It makes things worse. And we're all worried about everybody having homes. Nobody's going to be able to afford homes anymore if we keep doing this. We need to fix things. We don't need to cover it up. We don't need to do special agendas. We need to do what's right for the people. And that's what I would like to see done. And Commissioner Bell, if you believe this is what we need to do to help right the wrongs in this permitting process, then we need to knuckle down as 3 commissioners, put our heads together, have our public discussions about it, and figure this out and try and help get it righted and not let it go wrong anymore. And that's where I'm at, and that's all I have to say.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. Thank you. And for that meeting that Commissioner Bell and I attended, I too was dismayed with the way it dissolved in the end, and wish it had ended more respectfully. One of the things I was surprised, though, was the recognition that land use planning and permitting needs to be modernized. And that was one of the first times I had heard that from delegations in Olympia recently. And I was glad to hear it. And I think we are seeing a more across the board recognition that the way we are engaging in some of these land use decisions is just not working for us. And we're suffering the ramifications with loss of great projects like the partnership with REG and Phillips 66. So I think that recognition that land use planning needs to modernize so it's more predictable and understandable and timely for organizations that are trying to achieve good projects for our state. So I liked hearing that, and I think individuals are going to be amenable to that feedback from us.
Okay, so I'll go on to a couple of things, and I will just, Commissioner Briscoe, I don't know if you were a party to that, but I essentially got cut off, and I'm as unhappy and dissatisfied with WPPA as I am anybody in this process. They felt the need to shut me up during the process of that meeting. And that was, how do I say, irritating at least? Disrespectful at the most. And I had a valid point, and I think everybody agreed by the time we were done. But
that's
I do
when you
want to
get set off. That's when you get shut off, is when you have a valid point.
Well,
And it angers me that the people in this country, a lot of the people in this country, feel they have the right to take my right of freedom of speech, or your right of freedom of speech to speak what you want. It was your time, you had the right to speak, and I was not a party of that, but I'm not very happy to hear about that, because this just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
Well, I think the resolution to this is fairly simple. I do want to come back with two things. I want to come back to with a message to the WPPA, and that is, I did not hear anybody from WPPA advocating for a change in the permitting process to assist us with these projects. So I think when I put this together, it will not only be addressed to the WPPA, but it will also be addressed to the state legislature. There just isn't a lot of time right now, so I'm going to have to work my tail off this week to make sure I get it through everybody and get it approved so the legislature can see it. But I think we've seen this throughout all of our processes. Permitting is the last thing they want to touch because it's the hardest thing to touch. We go through our housing regulations. We've got layer upon layer upon layer. We've got regulations that started in the 60s that are no longer relevant, that still need to be applied. In every political season, we've got a new issue that gets layered onto that permitting process, which makes it more difficult. So not only do you have to go back and do the old ones, you've got to do the new ones as well. And I think nothing short of an overhaul of the permitting process is going to help. And I would advocate that at the local level as well as the state level. But really what needs to be looked at are the SEPA issues. The SEPA hasn't been addressed for a good 20, 30 years. There's a lot of provisions in there. There's never been a cost-benefit analysis as a part of this to say, do we want to make this a priority for us? But there's just not a chance that we're going to get another facility that will accomplish the goals that the state legislature wants to accomplish with their carbon reduction measures until we address the permitting process. They're all going to go somewhere else because permitting is easier. And we're watching a mass exodus of our industries and of our good-paying jobs. It just breaks my heart that Phillips 66 division went down to Louisiana just because they had to go through a full environmental impact statement when that was not the deal going in. So predictability, so they can finance it. In my word, these companies spent, I know they spent at least $2 million on that permit. The one down in, I think it was Grays Harbor, I think they spent easily $5 million to try to get that through. There was a methane plant, I believe in Kalama. They spent millions on that one as well. And we're just losing these projects and these good jobs in this state because of the permitting process. So as I go through this, if you don't mind, I'm going to hammer back a little bit at WPPA because I don't believe that they had our best interest in mind when they went into that meeting. Otherwise, they would have helped us address this. And secondly, I'm going to make sure that Representative Fitzgibbon and the rest of the sponsors of that bill address this at the front end of that bill so that we address the permitting before. I will say I had a great conversation with our lobbyist, Ben, who gave me some great insight into the personalities. And I have every comfort that Representative Fitzgibbons is going to listen. It appears as though he wants to hear some of these solutions. So I'm optimistic that when we put this through, we might actually get something done. But I think it's incumbent upon us when challenged to do something like this, to make a change. I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. So I'll be putting that together. I'll be passing it before you all, trying to get a little bit of advice between now and then as well to see what else we can add to that bill to make it better. But I think if they're going to impose those kind of standards on us, we ought to at least expedite the facilities that can produce it here. So that was my last order of business for other business. Anything else from Commissioner Shepard, Commissioner Briscoe?
Well, I'll go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I just don't have anything else now.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah, you know, it comes around to the housing problem. I mean, I'm not exactly sure how many thousands of dollars it drives each home up in this county so that people have to get more money to purchase, but we're all concerned about housing costs and low cost housing. Well, the permit process is a really good place to start, because I've got a hunch it's about, well, Ken, maybe you can enlighten me. Is it $50,000-$60,000 for a permit to build a house now, or more?
Probably more.
Or more.
Yeah, I mean, and that's ridiculous.
And
It's absolutely ridiculous.
especially when we're talking about trying to build low-income housing, I think I said this earlier today, it's much cheaper for low-income housing to buy an existing house than it is to build a new one, just because of the permitting costs and the land cost. So you can get yourself into low-income housing with existing stock far cheaper than you can by building a new one. And that's the case. And I will say that we have an amazing document by our Business Advisory Committee that was put before the County Council to help us revise some of those permitting issues. I would like to see that resurrected and brought back to the County Council. And I will also take some of those recommendations, because I believe they apply to the state permitting process as well, to move forward. But that, if you guys haven't seen that lately, or if we can get our hands on that, maybe that's something you guys will want to take a look at. Do you remember that document? Have you seen it lately, Commissioner Shepard?
I certainly remember it. I haven't seen any recent changes that have occurred, but I do remember.
Hey, Don, is there a chance we could get that resent to all the commissioners?
It'd be my pleasure.
Thank you. And that'll help us, I think, on the housing front. But I think it's time to weigh in on both these. I think it's time for us to weigh in on the housing permitting issues, and I think it's time for us to weigh in on the state permitting issues, because they're costing us jobs. All right.
So,
That being
one last thing I'd like to add, if I could, is that the people that are watching, or the people that do watch this video in the future, or near future, whatever, need to understand that the three commissioners here, we want to do the best job we can for Whatcom County. We want the people to have the quality of life that they've always had here. We want the people to be able to have their families here. And the only way that we can do that is with their help and their input and their pressure on things that they believe. So if they could email us, text us, if you have ideas about these permitting processes you'd like to see changed, I would at least certainly welcome the ideas, because we have a lot of smart people in this county, and we are going to need some help going into this mess that's been explained here. If we don't fix this, we're slowly going to spiral backwards down the tube. We won't have the big businesses here. We need to have those good jobs. And we're not going to be able to attract any new businesses when they have to wait 2 to 8 years to get permits to do business, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I'm asking for the county's help with ideas in the next few days or weeks, whatever it takes here to get this thing straightened around. We need some help. This is going to be a long-term project, but please speak up. You don't want your name brought to the forefront or mentioned it was an idea, just tell us that. It's a confidentiality statement then. We can't reveal who gave us the ideas or told us about that. So please help us with the problems we're faced with here. That's all I have, Commissioner Bell.
Thank you. We have one more other business.
Commissioners, I apologize, this didn't make it on the agenda, but we'd like your permission to send a letter to Senator Murray, Senator Cantwell, and then Congressman Larson and Del Benny. Basically, it's asking for the border to be open. I've got it up on the screen here. I'm hoping everyone can see that. Commissioners, if you don't mind, can we take a quick read through this? We have some time before the 5:30 comment.
Yeah,
I'm good with it.
So you'll have to.
Are there any pictures?
Is it
Too small.
Too small? Hold on. Let me try this differently.
You'd have to maybe share your screen.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Oh, there
Sorry,
you go.
I tried to cheat. Is that better?
There you go. Now I can see it.
Okay, Commissioners, it's up to you. I can leave it up here. We can email it to you. We can read through it quickly. Your call.
Yeah. Hey, it's, I just wanted to bring up this, jog my memory. I had in my notes to give my appreciation to our airport staff and everyone else who worked hard to identify a new air service carrier for Bellingham International Airport. I have just been thrilled with this news, and it's gotten so much great interest from the community and appreciation that Southwest Airlines is going to be having Bellingham Airport as one of their service destinations. And I am really looking forward to that. I think the reopening of the border is essential for them to be able to get off and launch the new routings that we're looking for. So, Southwest is even called out in here. Wonderful. So just airport team and everyone else who participated in that. I know there was a lot of hands in to make that deal happen, and I am thrilled with this. And if we can get this border open, I know it's not going to open at the drop of a hat, but what I'm looking for is some predictability. Again, can we get some kind of long range planning so we can have an idea of when this is going to happen? And it will help if you spell my last name correctly too.
Sorry about that, Commissioner.
My family couldn't afford 2 H's.
Did everyone get a chance to see that sufficiently, or would you rather have an email version? Okay.
Commissioner Briscoe, do you have a chance to read it?
Yeah, I glanced through it there. I'm good. I mean, this whole closed border thing doesn't make any sense to me. I've been talking to people that are going back and forth across the border, and it's not essential business. It's kind of gotten very Mickey Mouse.
Kind of depends on the agent you get at the border.
Yeah, exactly.
The interesting thing is the sentiment on the other side of the border is still against us. It's still overwhelmingly in favor of keeping it shut down, so it's not completely in our hands.
Is the commission okay with that letter? And if so, can we get a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the letter to Patty Murray, Rick Larson, Maria Cantwell, and Susan Dale Benny, penned by the commission, I guess. I'm in favor.
I second the motion.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Commissioner Briscoe, you want to vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Shepard?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell? One more thing to sign.
Thank you, commissioners. That's all I have.
We will take a 10-minute break, come back for public comment. See you then.
Yeah, no, we'll talk before then. Yeah,
Okay, we're going to reconvene the Port of Bellingham Commission meeting for Tuesday, the 16th, 2021. We're looking for public comment. Eddie, I know you're out there.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please say your name and let's go.
Oh, there's some feedback noise there. I thought people are automatically muted.
You could turn off your microphone if you're not on this call. 1966, is that you, Eddie?
No, that's not me. That's someone else.
Okay, 1966, you need to mute your, thank you.
It was muted.
Oh.
Okay, I guess, I guess since I was called on, I'll go, and then next speaker. So my name is Eddie Uri. I'm a resident of downtown Bellingham. Some weeks ago, I helped my neighbors move when they were forced out of their home that they'd made for themselves at the lawn of City Hall and the public library, and helped them move again this week. And without being offered any location to go to, and really being given, just nothing. Some folks ended up down here on port property with the hope that, staying out of the way, not bothering anyone, they'd be left at least for, some amount of time to gather their things for folks moving out, as we've been asked to do, as the city and everyone's requesting that they be able to relocate and have a safe place to recollect and rest for a moment and figure out where to go next. Today, folks have been forcefully removed by with police officers, and I guess it's just the question for the port here. You're in possession of a pretty sizable public asset, and this is space. There's a parking lot on Cornwall and Laurel that is empty, and folks are being asked to vacate so that it can just be empty and unused. But we know there's a planned another sweep and forced move coming up in another city park in just a few days, where most of the folks have relocated, and they went there because they weren't given any other option. So, where they're going to go to remains to be unseen. It seems like the port might consider offering some space to the city to make that process more smooth and orderly, and maybe even start before Friday, so it's not rushed all at once. Somewhere in an ideal location, where there could be supervision. I know that for folks that were able to stay a couple of nights down there, having the security watch looking out for them was actually helpful. Knowing things were being looked after, just having a place to, lay your head for a moment and figure out where to go. Because, folks who came here to request help, to request services, contacted Opportunity Council, but were forced out, and are not able to get into any place immediately. There's waiting lists, there's limited access. It's just a question of where do you want people to go? And if it's not going to be on port land, well, I guess that's your decision, but chosen inaction is also an action, and that has consequences. And I just really want you to think about what you're doing and the decision you're making, and the undue and unnecessary hardship that you're putting on people who are really causing no harm and not bothering anyone, to force them out again when they're exhausted and past and in pain. And it's just it hurts me, and I just want you to think about it, because you have the power as a port commission to decide to do something with this land. And I'm not talking about having to set up a big encampment. Just let's make a process smoother. Let's let people have a safe space to go where they don't have to lose all their belongings, have them thrown in the dump or locked in the police department where they're very difficult to retrieve. The port could offer storage. I'm aware there's empty warehouses, heated storage. The port has plenty of space. Offering that could make that transition smoother. Just maybe you could have a conversation about what you might be able to offer in this immediate short term, because this is an emergency. This is a crisis. We're in a dangerous situation. And if you can, anything the port could do, and even if just letting folks be somewhere and not bothering them requires really very little effort, just allowing us to be in a parking lot for a moment would really help. So maybe that's not happening today, but maybe if you'd reconsider for the plan in a couple of days. This is your opportunity. This is your meeting. So I really hope you take that into consideration, and know that many, many, many people in the public support this and see this as a highly reasonable, humanitarian, and really, frankly, easy thing to do. So thank you very much for your time. Good night.
Best thing to do is just
Commissioner
thank
Bell, I'd like to address those questions.
Oh, Commissioner Briscoe, I would be hard pressed to stop you.
Well, I believe there was a discussion with Commissioner Shepard today where people were turning down resources, Mr. Erie. They were put forward at the first move you spoke to, and on port property. And people, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Shepard, I believe you said people weren't accessing those resources. Is that correct?
Yes, I stated that there was and still is additional capacity at base camp that is being unused. Yesterday, there were 52 spaces available and have been for several weeks.
So, Mr. Uri, could you tell me why these people aren't accessing these things that are available to them? And you want the port to supply things that are already available?
Well, I'm happy to direct respond as asked by Commissioner Briscoe. I mean, I know other people are waiting to speak and can speak more to answer those questions, but frankly, I mean, there's a small number of folks who came down to this port lot and they were seeking services. They're trying to they're on waiting lists. They're trying to get into housing, and just to go to base camp would require losing all of their possessions, all that they have. They would have to give them up because they're not allowed to bring them in, and except in a very small amount. And, you know, we're trying to arrange safe storage for them independently, but we got a lot of people who are confused about where to go, having one location they know that they can go to and have their things taken care of. And actually a few folks who were here went to base camp and they left their things with us and knew that they would be looked after. And some other folks, I think, went back to Laurel because they wanted to feel safe in numbers and have, you know, some service support that's there. But frankly, you know, the outreach that was done at City Hall, at Civic Field last week was, it was 9 a.m. to noon, 3 days that it was done. None of that was done before the sweep was announced. It was after. And folks I talked to over the weekend when I was down there helping out to pack up, they didn't know about it. No one told them. There was no actual approaching them, and it was not visible. There was no signs. The tables were far away. They were far away on the other side of the field, hidden, and they didn't know. And for those folks that did go to the tables, I've heard they were told the same thing they've heard before, which is that there's no space, services are maxed out, you're on a waiting list, and sure, you can go to base camp under certain parameters, but there's 150 people in there during a pandemic crowded together in one building, and it's not safe for people, and it's frankly perfectly rational and reasonable to rather, you know, camp in a tent than have to go indoors with a lot of other folks who might be a danger to them, or for whatever reason. You know, it's a personal choice. Now, would you go to base camp? I think I wouldn't. So I would rather camp in a tent. I think it's a personal choice, and the question is, what's going to be allowed in public space? And if we're not saying people can exist outdoors, not giving them a safe place to do it, well, they're just going to be there anyway, and it's going to be less safe. We're talking about, I'm not talking, you know, there's a conversation to be had maybe about use of the site that you'd offered, Tiny Home Village. I think that's great that the port offered that, but we're talking about just getting us through this week. Where are folks supposed to go from Laurel? And frankly, they can't go to base camp because there are more people there and more people elsewhere camping than base camp has capacity for, even at the maximum technical capacity, and which is actually, you know, it's not advisable to max out a shelter. There should always be some excess room. And there's just so many reasons for it. It's just not true. There was not real services offered. And they have not been offered a place to go. Base camp is not a viable option, and it would require just losing everything. So, I mean, I think it's perfectly reasonable to offer people some safe space to leave their things, some storage in a warehouse perhaps, where they know they can come back and get it, or just a place to regroup while they're in the midst of a very difficult and exhausting situation to figure out where to go next. And if, you know, we stayed in this lot, our hope was that services would come to us. We were actually we were here to ask for help. We're asking for services to come to us. And instead of that, we were met with harassment by your employee, Scott, and being forced out by police with guns, loaded guns. So, you know, that's what happened today. And I just don't think it was necessary.
Well, I think you kind of cleaned it up a little bit, but I have another question for you, Mr. Year. So all the people that think that all these people you speak of that think that those people should be on port property, how many of you people have invited those people to camp in your backyard and stay there on your property? That's a question I have. Is everybody wants to use somebody else's property and they don't want to use their own. And I got a hunch a lot of those people that are pointing at this particular port property haven't invited those people to their home yet. So that's all I have.
That's an interesting question because many people.
That's all I have. Thank you.
there's many. I let someone stay at my place. I mean, there's churches that are offering.
Thank you, Mr. Uri. I believe your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
You answered my question. Thank you. Commissioner Bell, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Briscoe. Heather, is your hand up?
Yes, it is.
Are you wishing to address the commission?
Yes, is it my turn?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Heather Katahdin. Thank you for the work you each do as staff and commissioners. And I wish the public record to state that on Saturday, March 13th, local tax-paying citizens witnessed roughly a dozen of our unsheltered neighbors who were requested to depart from their home shelters from the Lower Jerry Field, found an unused piece of public land and set up their tents and tarps to rest on a location that was close to the land that the city had been in winter negotiations with for a low barrier shelter. And I understand this winter the city was in communication with the port. Citizens have witnessed our unsheltered neighbors who departed Jerry Field, lived and rested on our public port land on Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday. Other citizens have witnessed how these same citizens were treated today. I also experienced it hurtful and disrespectful to hear one of our elected commissioners to publicly shame a citizen who provided the only public comment at the beginning of the meeting, who was in support of creating solutions for our citizens who are unsheltered. I hope his comments do not discourage any other citizens from becoming involved in their government or giving public comment. Popeye. Our community understands the situation of lack of housing and lack of enough transitional tiny home villages is complex and fluid. Our community is very generous, and we are caretakers of an abundance of resources. Our community works hard, and we are aware of how our taxes are spent. We are aware of the high costs of group congregate shelters. We are aware of the low cost of transitional housing models, such as the local Homes Now tiny home models, which have been successful. We are aware it is possible for the port to create creative pathways for more citizens to be sheltered. Many of our neighbors who are living outside, who cannot live in a crowded indoor setting, have already been screened through Homes Now and through a screening process via our local Bellingham Police Department. As a community, we will need to be creative with our solutions. May our community respect each neighbor. May we care for our lands and our waters. May we share our abundance. Thank you for your time listening.
Thank you, Heather. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, I would.
And you are?
My name is Michelle Thompson. I am one of the unhoused people that this meeting has begun to talk about. And I have seen the site at Laurel and Cornwall and have been in communication with the other people that are here. And we have already set in place protocols to guarantee that there is no obstruction to the railroads, by people, by possessions, by anything. We have put into place chore lists and daily required activities that people who would be here would be doing to put, to make sure that the parking lot here is safe, cleanly, CDC compliant with, the COVID-19 protocols. And I believe that we as a group can utilize this land for, a short period of time, and it would help tremendously more people than you could even begin to think about. And I hope that the commission would consider a temporary trial to see, see that we are doing our part and taking care of the things that we need to take care of on our end to make sure that everybody is safe and that it is not a big distraction. And, I just really, really hope that, if not this area, that maybe the port would consider a different piece of land. We're just trying to get our lives together and get things back into order. And it's really hard when you come from absolutely nothing and you're forced to move time and time and time and time again. Unless you have experienced that for yourself, you can't imagine the fear and the anguish that it causes daily. I mean, to some people, it's debilitating. And, we're just looking for a safe place to lay our heads every night. That's the same place for a while. It's been a very, very trying winter season and into spring. So that's what I have to say. There's also one other person here who would like to speak if there's time. I will leave it to you, to the commission, to continue forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hi, my name is Buster B.
Your name is what?
Buster?
Buster?
Yeah, Buster.
Hi, Buster.
And I wanted to take note, I wanted to let people know that, like myself, there's a lot of people out there that can't go to base camp. I'm trespassed from base camp for the silliest reasons. And the point is I can't go there. And there's a lot of other people who can't go there as well. Don't have that option as an option. So I just want to let that's it.
Thank you, Buster. Any other comments?
Thank you very much.
Okay, hearing none, meeting is adjourned.